Good morning, my little pog champs. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we are here to finish the Constellation tier list, the one that we started with the 4s and are now moving on to the 5s. However, for the 5 stars, in terms of ranking their constellations, I do need to tweak the criteria a little bit. The main factor is still the same. We are not looking at who the most powerful, who the best characters are with constellations. We are looking at who is the most improved from their base characters to their constellations. For example, Beidou, a 4-star, is probably an A tier character overall, but since in my personal opinion, her constellation don't add as much to her overall gameplay as say Zhang Li or Noelle or even Amber, she's going to be lower on the tier list. It's about improvement. And with 5 stars, I don't know if I could rank them based off their full constellations because I want to tailor most of my content to free-to-play and budget players like myself. It's not really my style to pander to whales and whale content altogether. I want to keep things realistic. And so for the 5 stars, we're only going to look at their C1, the difference between a base 5-star and a Constellation 1 5-star character. And like always, if you're not new to the channel, then you know the drill. This tier list was compiled with the help with the input of viewers on my Twitch. So if you want to have your say in other tier lists in the future before they're put out, if you want to get your opinion out there, then check out the stream twitch.tv/Spinecar. The stream is a lot of fun and I'd love to have you there. I'm live every single morning at 9:30 a.m. PST. So check it out sometime. What's the risk? Your precious time? Good point. Fair enough. All right. So let's finally jump into it, starting with the standard banner characters. Jean is coming up first. Basically, it's a small buff on her charged elemental skill. The 40% attack increase is decent, especially if you are running swirl teams, but is it a marked improvement from her base character? Not so much. The main criteria for an A or S tier constellation is adding a new dynamic, a new element. And while the small buff is good, it is very specific only to her skill and doesn't really add anything new to her kit. It's not terrible. Not every single character, even 5 stars, are going to have game-changing C1s. You're going to want a little bit better than this, so I'm gonna have to throw her in C for now, which brings us to Diluc, who has a pretty similar constellation in the sense that it's just a general buff to his damage output. I think what puts it slightly over Jean's is that it's a buff to every single one of his attacks. Whereas with Jean, only her E is getting stronger. You get a 15% buff to Diluc's skill, his burst, and his normals. The only issue, of course, is that 50% threshold for this constellation to work. With 5 stars in particular, you would want the effects of their passives, their new constellation passives, to be ever present, and having such a large prerequisite for this one is a bit of a letdown. That being said, base Diluc is still a busted, broken, one of the best DPS units in the entire game, so adding a 15% damage output to all of his attacks, even if it is just on enemies over 50% HP, is still decent, so I think B tier is fair. And now we have Chichi, who, in my opinion, in my experience actually, because I do have Constellation 1 Chichi, it is so bad for a constellation on a 5-star, a standard banner 5-star, where you have a 1 in 15 chance of pulling her, let alone twice. The proc for this is so specific for a 5-star constellation that it is not even worth getting. You have to go out of your way to make this passive work, and even when you do, 2 energy per enemy hit on a burst with 80 energy cost, you are not going to notice this thing ever. I had base Chichi for about 3 weeks and then I pulled her constellation, which I've had for about a month and a half now, and if you asked me to tell you the difference between base and C1 Chichi, I couldn't do it. If you put a gun to my head, if you put my family in a basement, I still couldn't tell you what it improves upon her overall kit. So for that, Chichi will stand all by her poor lonesome self down in D tier. That being said though, let me reiterate, this is not about who the best characters are. If this was a general power ranking, I would put Chichi in S, because she's probably the best healer in the game, but this tier list is about constellations, the base character compared to their C1, and her C1 ain't shit. Mona, however, who is the next character on the list, has a very useful C1. It adds elemental reaction buffs after using her burst, which is insane because Mona's burst is the best thing about her. And with most Mona builds, you have her elemental mastery as well as her energy recharge as high as you can possibly get them. So for DPS Mona and DPS support Mona, this is one of the best C1s on a 5-star you could ask for. With Vaporize, with Electro Charge, this is going to be a huge reaction buff. Even Frozen if you're running a team based around the new Cryo set, which is really good. There's just something about Hydro Cons that MiHoYo put extra time into to make sure they were worth it. So Mona will be the first S tier 5-star on the list. Next up is Keqing, who has me torn between B and C, honestly. It basically just adds a decent amount of damage damage to her E, which does have a very low cooldown. But similar to Jean, it is only about her skill. It doesn't add anything else to the rest of her kit. So it is pretty one-dimensional, and the 50% could be a lot higher for a C1 5-star on standard banner, clearly oriented more towards DPS. If the 50 was 75 or even 100, it'd probably be a lot higher. It would be in B or A. But for the same reasons as Jean, it doesn't add anything new, and it only expands upon one part of her set. So she does have to go in C. And now we can move on to the rate-ups, who you can argue are easier or harder to obtain than the standard banners. There's rumors that they are going to get repeat rate-ups or be thrown into the standard banner, but as it stands, Venti, Clee, Zhang Li, Child, they are all gone. You can no longer obtain them in the game. I know I just talked a lot of shit on Jean and Keqing because their constellations only build upon one thing in their play and doesn't add any new elements, any new dynamics. And with Venti, the buff is even more specific. It is only for his aim shots. But you could argue that this does change the way that a lot of people play Venti. Before, you're basically using him for swirl with his E and his burst, and you are still doing that. But now you can incorporate him as a DPS unit now that his charge shots do 66% more damage. And you don't have to give up on your broken elemental mastery artifacts because his charge attacks are still going to have swirl. He's just going to generally hit a lot harder now. And I think that is why I can consider this a good C1. With the right bow equipped, you can convert Venti into a full-on DPS charged attack spamming unit, similar to what Ganyu is going to be like. It can definitely change the way that you play him, which is what I'm looking for in this tier list, so I'm going to slot him in A. Next up is Clee, who when I first made this tier list with my Twitch viewers, right off the bat after reading it, I was about to put her straight into S, but the more I looked at it and the more I looked into the stats, apparently it's roughly a 24% chance, which by the way, why did they do that? Why did they say a certain chance and not give you the exact number? I don't understand. There's no way to find out in game. You have to scour the internet. It's a Constellation 5-star. Please at least give us the numbers. But apparently it's anywhere between 20 and 33%, just based off people's individual testing of it, which in the grand scheme of things isn't terrible. You are going to hit it pretty frequently, but that's really only if she is your main DPS. If she's out on the field for long periods of time, then yeah, you are going to be making the most of it. But a lot of people don't have Clee built that way. A lot of people have her just for her E and her burst spamming. So if you don't have her HP and her defense built up to the point where she can stand being active for 30 seconds to a minute at a time, then it's not incredible. I still think it's very good though. The damage output that you can get from this is much higher than the others we've seen so far, but it is still risky. You're not going to use it. You're not going to be able to use it sometimes. So I can't justify putting it in S, but I think somewhere in the middle of A is fair, which brings us to Child, who I have experience with his C1. Everybody knows what it is. It's very useful because especially with the new Hydro set, most of his DPS is going to be coming from his melees. So you want to be able to use them as a main DPS unit as much as possible. I know you can't say it's a game-changing, build-altering constellation, but it adds to what he's already good at a lot. I think every single Hydro character, 5 stars and 4 stars, have all been put in S so far, but really I would say it's all justified. Child, S tier constellation. And finally, we have Big Daddy Zhang Lee. So this is a very interesting one. If you haven't heard the news, Zhang Li's getting buffs, and he's getting very significant buffs. It should be on the in-game alerts, but if you haven't seen it yet, I will throw his buffs up right here. So with these buffs and with this constellation, Zhang Li is going to be an immensely better character than he was before. His damage output is going to be a lot higher, especially paired with someone like Albedo, like Ningguang. I was tempted to put him in S, but somebody else did say that this should technically be one of his passives. Still though, a marked improvement, especially with the new buffs. So compared to his base, I would put Zhang Li C1 in a very solid A. And next up, we have the current rate up 5-star Albedo. It is insane how many people slept on this character before his release. They saw his talents, they saw his passives, and immediately thought mediocre. But it took people just one test run to realize that this artistic sociopath is insanely good. As support with the platform, it's great, and even as DPS with a 4-piece noblesse set, he is fantastic. Already with his stats, he is Elemental Burst the character, and this gives you even more incentive to use his E to use the Isatomas, because they make his burst come back even quicker. Just like Child, this adds so much to what people are already utilizing Albedo for, what his character was basically designed to be, so at the very least, he belongs to be the top of A tier. Ganyu is already confirmed to be the next rate up, and Zhao, I, along with everyone else, are 99.9% sure he is going to be the first, if not the second 1.35-star rate up, so I think we can include them on the tier list as well. According to Honey Impact, Ganyu's first constellation will decrease opponent's cryo res by 15% and also regenerate 2 energy for her. And if you look at her passives, she is meant for charged attack damage. So the Constellation 1 just adding to that, just once again, like Albedo, like Child, adding to her strengths. You use her charge attacks to deal more cryo damage and get her burst back, so you can use her burst to increase cryo damage to use her charge attacks more, and it just goes on in a cycle. You guys get the idea. I don't feel like I have to explain this one too much. Ganyu, in my opinion, S tier Constellation 1. So Zhao's C1 basically adds the number of times you can use his E before the cooldown starts, which is already pretty spammable, by the way. I think based on what I've seen in the beta footage, is going to be a very good move. Is it amazing? Does it add new elements to his gameplay? No. Is it going to improve him as a DPS character overall? Yes. I can't speak too much about it because 1, not all the information about Zhao has been disclosed, and 2, there's just not enough footage out there to get a good grasp on how he's going to feel as a unit. That being said though, on paper, just based off what I see, what I can tell, it is going to be a very solid C1, and a lot of people, myself included, have been saving for him for a very, very long time now. So I think A tier is a good spot for him, probably just behind Clee. Then finally we have the MC. Of course, he has 2 different elements, which means 2 different constellation trees, but since he is technically a 5-star, we will look at them. We're going to be looking at them a little bit differently than the others, because throughout the progression of Genshin, you are going to get all of his constellations free of charge, of course. C1, really good. I think most Geo MCs have their energy recharge pretty much maxed out. C2, I'm not a big fan of his E, but if it does do more damage when it explodes, then very useful. C4, adding even more to his burst spamming to his overall energy recharge, very solid. And C6 kind of takes away from C2, but Wake of Earth lasting for 5 seconds longer, therefore having a 10% boosted crit rate for 5 seconds longer is fantastic. The Geo MC constellations are very good overall. It's just weird that I can't exactly rank them accurately. I can't ask if they're worth it because they're not worth anything. They're free. Everybody gets them. But just going off the factor of base MC to C6 MC, it's definitely a marked improvement. A lot of them are built towards support and very solid support at that, so I think I will throw them in B. The Anemo MC, however, is a different story. Palm Vortex sucking in opponents probably should have been a base character thing. 16% energy recharge is decent, is solid. Reducing damage taken, if this was 50 or anything above that, it would be good, but I feel like 10% isn't a very significant difference. It does make it safer to fully charge Palm Vortex, but still a little bit underwhelming. Then C6 is basically a baby back bitch version of the Viridescent 4-piece set. That being said, it is good. It is solid. I'd say the only issue with the full Constellation Anemo MC is that his constellations and his talents overall aren't really built for DPS or support entirely. It's kind of a mix of both, and you do kind of want to commit to one with most of your characters. Also, in terms of Anemo users in general, Sucrose and even Venti are much more appealing options, especially Sucrose when it comes to damage support. And you know, maybe Sayu too. Maybe Sayu when she comes out in 1.3, maybe 1.3. Anybody? Sayu for 1.3, 1.4. Inazuma. Mihoyo, please just give us Sayu. We are begging. I need the Anemo Claymore Lolly. So I would throw Geo MC's full constellation tree into C. Again, though, these two may not be accurate. It's very hard to judge the full constellations of a unit who gets their constellations for free. But that's it. That completes the tier list. As always, who do you think should be higher or lower? What are your thoughts? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Just keep it civil. I am very fragile. And if you enjoyed the content you saw today overall, make sure to leave the video a like and even consider subscribing. It would mean a great deal to me. Also, if you want to be involved, if you want to have your voice heard in other tier lists in the future, similar videos to this one, then go ahead and follow the stream, twitch.tv/Spinecar, and join the Discord so you have notifications for when I am live, when I am making these tier lists. I'll throw the link to that in the description. But for now, let's wrap things up. Thank you for the 3rd or 4th time for watching the video. My name, of course, has been Spinecar, and I will see you all next time.